are. We're back. Okay, we had a question here. Go ahead, ask your question. Push it down.
Yeah, my question was regarding the midlife crises, whether or not, like, what makes people who seem to want to switch jobs like every 3 years different from people who stick to a job for 10 or 15 years?
It's a good question. Okay? What Erickson would probably say is that the people who are constantly switching, it's not a matter of burnout. It's a matter of they haven't really found their identity yet. It's not that's still an identity crisis. Who am I? What am I doing? I try this, that's no good. I try that, that's no good. I try this, that's no good. And who they are. You go ahead. Push it down, push it down. He always sits at a front place without a microphone. Come over here. Come sit over here. It's driving me crazy. Moves 2 different sides of the room and he still sits at a place without a microphone. Come sit where there's a microphone. Yeah, go ahead.
What if you just get bored?
That's it, bored. That's exactly right. For Erickson, that's a perfect word. For Erickson, bored means you don't feel you're doing anything productive anymore. It's just not generative, right? Now, it could be that in your side of yourself, you say, you know, teaching is important, or sweeping the streets is important, or whatever I'm doing is important, but I've had it. That can happen too. But basically what you're saying is, I don't feel that I'm creating. It's important, but I'm bored with it. I can't really do it anymore, right? And that becomes an important, an important thing, and that's why here is the place where people will say, look, I'm just working for a living, but I'm working. I mean, you see people like this. People think they're nuts, right? They're scoutmasters and they spend hours and hours in the scout troop. Well, that's fine. That's good. It's generative, right? Even when people go, they have to be generative. Okay, you see all those people. You go to the hospital, you see that people are clearly retired. They're behind the information booths. They have to be generative. One day I go into the hospital. I go into my doctor's office and he moved floors, and I didn't know what he moved building. You know, there's building 1 and building 2. So I go to the guy. I say, "Pardon me, it's Stan. He was on the faculty at the office next to mine for years. He had retired years ago." "Oh," he said, "I'll help you." He's got to do something. So I come downstairs. We're talking. I couldn't find my car. You know how that is. Those garages are built by some sadist, right? Speaking of Freud, right? Where the heck is it? Oh, there it is down there. You see it? Still listen. He said, the only way to find your car in this garage is to walk up. He's already well into his 70s, right? He said, "Come on, I'll walk with you. We'll find your car." And I got it. He said, "No, come on. I'll walk with you." And I wanted to talk about old times, but he wanted to be sure I found my car too. Right? And we walked up, and he's huffing and puffing, but he said, "I'm okay. Don't worry." Found a car. He said, "I'll drive you down." I said, No, that's fine. I'll walk down." He could take the elevator. He said, No, I'm okay. You know, he wanted to get a little exercise, but he wanted to be sure I had it. He said, "I'll take the elevator down." And I could see him. He's watching through the door to be sure I got down okay, right? He had to do something that made a difference, something generative. It could be volunteer activities. It can be raising your kids. And there are plenty of people. This model of saying, I'm working to make a living so I can support my family, there's nothing wrong with that model. If supporting your family really makes you feel like you're doing something very, very important. And I mean, I know it myself. I'm that kind of a real motherhead. I remember the first time somebody said, "Oh, you're Avi's father." Oh, man, that made me feel good. That's something important. I'm raising this kid, right? It made me really feel good. More important, all the doctors and all that other stuff in front of my name, and after it, all the degrees. I didn't care about. This was important. This was generative, right? This meant something, okay? And it can be generative. You know, people, you'll often notice people, when you see on the teams, for instance, and they'll tell you, the older guy, right, is helping the new guy learn it, even though he knows the new guy is going to take his job. That's usually for real. And when it's not, you can spot it because, I know I'm coming to the end of my career anyway. I got to do something important, help the next person, right? Do something that's important. And you'll often notice that the players on the sports teams who succeed as coaches, or managers or whatever the sport calls them, it's because they still want to make a contribution, right? Not because they, and they want, and some of the managers who are not good is because they're looking for a job, or I can't get out of it, I loved it myself, and what am I going to do? And so it makes a difference, and once this doesn't happen, right? By the way, interestingly enough, these things are intimately involved. We used to have a thing, we have it less now, but a woman gets married and she's Mrs. Joe Jones, right? That's her identity, and that's how she's generative, right? She's part of the, then they get divorced, or Joe Jones dies, or something happens. She's lost. She doesn't have her sense of identity. The only intimacy she's ever had is with Joe Jones. What's going to happen? I don't know how to deal with other people, or I deal with them as Mrs. Joe Jones in this club or that club or this thing. And what am I going to do now? What's going to be? Right? And often you'll see people that happens. You say, well, you still got your kids, they get lost. Because the sense of generativity is all in this identity. They don't have a real sense of their own identity. And so Erickson's telling you have a sense of your own identity. You know how to work together with other people, because you can't be generative without other people. And you're really making contributions. And often this midlife crisis, and you can take my word for it, everybody experiences it, right? Almost everybody. Even if you don't leave your job, you do the same thing. What am I going to do? What's going to happen? Right? I mean, I'll tell you the truth. This whole thing about putting classes on TV and websites and all that, I was getting a little blah about this job. And then I said, ooh, this technology stuff, even though machines and I don't get along, right? This appealed to me. Now, it always had. I was the first person in our department, one of the first in the college, to go off and teach courses off campus. It always appealed to me. It was a sense of who I was, what I was doing. But this sense of but when the other stuff began to get me down, oh, this helped me, and I've been doing it for years, right? We'll see what the next step is. Interestingly enough, often this midlife crisis comes from a sense of I have to look back and what did I really do? What did I can contribute? I will tell you, and that leads us to the next stage, which is, let's go to the PowerPoint, integrity versus despair, and this is called old age. I'll tell you something interesting about old age. Come back to me now, okay, if you can, okay? Old age has changed. Does anybody know why the age to collect Social Security was set at 65? Does anybody know why they set it back then in the 1930s? Why they set it at 65? Go ahead.
Did it have to do with life expectancy?
Yeah, that's the age that everybody was pretty much dead, right? So I figured we wouldn't have to pay too many people, right? The life expectancy was 65. Most people were gone at 65. So a few people live after that. Yeah, we'll give them a shot. We'll give them a few bucks. Now, most people they talk about young old age and old age. Young old age goes to somewhere 65 to 70, 75, sometimes to 80. And old age is after 80. And of course, when I saw Stan, right, I saw him, he was in young old age. He still had to be generative. So, what's going on here? It's not uncommon for people in their 50s or 60s to say, well, I want to make a career change now. This stuff, I've had it. I want to do this. And, I'm 63, 64. I could do another 10 years anyway, right? By the way, in case you're interested, the Social Security age is going up. In case you're interested. Those of you who are in your 20s and 30s, it's already planned for you to collect Social Security not until you're 70. Already people in their late 50s, early 60s now can't get it till they're 66. At least not all of it. So what can I tell you? So generativity then, go ahead, what were you saying? Push it down?
So we'll probably be 80 years old
yeah,
when we
that's
get
right.
Social Security.
Eventually lifespan will be 200. And interestingly enough, the lifespan hasn't increased much. Benjamin Franklin lived to be 83. Right? There are people living in their 80s and 90s before. It's just how many people get there is increasing. Right? A lot more people are getting there. But I mean, you still don't say, oh, gee, about 20% of the population is living to be 100, and that's still not happening, right? We'll see what happens, right? So, boy, if we can do that, that'll speed up space exploration. People live to be 300, right? You get no place for all of us. But the point is, but ultimately, when you really get to old age, there's a sense of integrity versus despair. You look back and say, was there an integrity to my life, or was there despair to my life, or did I screw it up? Now, Erickson talks about saying, it was the way it had to be. Now, nobody looks back and says, oh, I didn't make any mistakes. But in the end, people look back and say, did I do it okay or did I not do it okay? And this is Ericksonian's explanation for the large amount of depression you see in older people. You look back, and part of that midlife crisis is the same thing, Wait a minute. Did I do it right? Did I make a contribution? Am I doing okay here? Right? I once heard a speech, right, from a rabbi in a synagogue, and he said, it's very, very good that people are exercising, that all of you are exercising, and people are having good diets, and they're exercising, they listen to the doctors, and they're improving their disease. But I have news for you. You're going to die anyway, right? And that was so when you die, what are you going to do? You're going to look back on your life. And I don't know if it was the same speech. The same guy said, I've seen a lot of people dying, right? I've been with a lot of people who are dying, know they're going to die. He said, I never heard one say, I wish I had made more money. I wish I made my business bigger. I heard a lot of them say, I wish I'd spend more time with my family. Wish I'd done, in other words, generative stuff. In other words, once you building a business can be generative, but another one, all of them said at some point it's this interpersonal relationship. How people are generous. I'll tell you, I don't think my father would have minded. He's gone now. His story about he had a real depression when a few years after he retired, and he told me afterwards. He came out of it how he came out of it. Right? My father, the therapist was trying to find some stuff. It was a classic Ericksonian. I screwed up my life depression. What did I do with my life? My father was on the team that invented Kodacolor. He used to give talks about it. What would happen is some chemist invents some theoretical emulsion, right? In the days when photography was films, not electronic, right? Emulsion, and it never works, right? In theory, it has to work. So then you give it to photographers to figure out how to make it work. What do? You keep people hands-on. My father was a photographer. So Kodacolor, the first emulsion thing, and they knew it has to work because in theory it does, or it should work. But the emulsion wouldn't stick to the film. The stuff the goo, it would ooze off. He says that the other guy broke the beaker in the laboratory, and he noticed that the emulsion was sticking to to it. The other guy says, my father broke it, and he noticed. But in case the two of them noticed that it was sticking to glass, and they ground up glass into the emulsion, and it stuck. The first one had ground glass. I know I'm bragging about my father, but what the heck? The first people who climbed Mount Everest, Hillary, Sir something Hillary, and Tenzing, his guide, the Sherpa guide, he developed the pictures that were sent back to the Queen. For 3 weeks I didn't see him. He was working until 6 in the morning until midnight. Right? He'd leave 6 in the morning, come back at midnight. So I guess it was a half-hour trip both ways, right? Still today, but in those days even more so, you can take the same negative and develop it in different ways and make it look like a different picture, different effects, different things. These are pictures from the top of the world, so to speak, right? They worked for that on hours. There were 3 of them. And the guy pointed this out to him. Well, didn't care. He said, you don't think somebody would have invented color film without me? You don't think somebody else would have developed the pictures? And he told him what finally did it. He said, you have 2 sons, right? He said, that hit it. Only I raised you guys. Nobody else did. Right? And if I hadn't been there, you could make the case, your life, and he was proud of us, right? Your life could have turned out where, that did it. That was the thing that convinced him he was generative, and he could look back in his life and said, I did something okay. Right? So, I'm proud of him that he figured out that broken glass is on the Kodacolor. Maybe somebody else would have, but meanwhile, he's the one who did it, but that wasn't enough for him. Because you look back and you're looking at your whole life. Now, we're always doing that. Even people here in their 20s and 30s are looking back and say, I screwed this up. I wish I hadn't. I wasted time. But of course, when you're 75, you can't heal it. You Can't say, all right, never mind, I'll go make it better. So what Erickson, now if you take a look, let's go to the PowerPoint. What you're seeing that Erickson is telling us, right, and I purposely saved this until the end and didn't do it as we discussed each stage, that as we move through our lives and try to get this healthy resolution, we expand our social horizons. That's why it's a social psychosocial theory. At first, just like Freud said, it's your parents, and the trust versus mistrust, the orals. But then, in the autonomy versus shame, it's both parents. In initiative versus guilt, it's your whole family. Industry versus inferiority, it's your school and your neighborhood. It's your friends too. How you feel, you know, what goes on in your interactions with your peers. Identity versus role confusion, you expand to groups. You're looking for your identity, not just in your immediate school and your group, but you're reaching out. So you're following this crazy rock star and that crazy, you know, and this crazy businessman and this and that. All of a sudden it's Bill Gates and this rock star and whoever else you're going to imitate, right? Whoops. Sorry. Okay? Eventually in intimacy versus isolation, it's not just looking, but you're actually having to go out and interact with other people. Have partners, right? Partners who are your friends, sexual partners, partners with whom you compete and partners with whom you cooperate. And by the way, there's an intimate kind of competition, right? The people who will cut your heart out to get your business, right? Cut the heart out of the other guy. For instance, there's a guy, he drove me, come back to me for a second. Drove me to a poker game, right? I got two guys I play poker with who are both insurance agents. And this one guy's driving me, right? He picks me up, he's driving me, he said, I'll take you, right? And I'm talking about insurance, he said, oh, this is wrong, that's right, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do that, right? And he knows I'm much better friends with the other guy. I've known the other guy for years. In fact, his wife and my wife worked together, friends for years, right? That's how we got to be friends. He knew that I was going to buy this from the other guy. He said, whether you buy it from me or buy it from the other guy, he said, this is what you got to do, right? They talk all the time. They give each other business leads. They're in competition, at least in theory, right? But they know how to cooperate. They know how to do things. There are rules to competition. Interestingly enough, companies in which there's a competitive ethic, we're competing with each other. If I step on your face, it'll make me one step higher. Those companies are not, they do not compete well on the open market. Companies in which the employees are cooperative among themselves and the workers and are trying to help each other, they're much more competitive companies. They do much better. And there are ways to compete that shows you have a sense of identity, a sense of yourself, a sense of your abilities. And matter of fact, you know, and he told me if it's going to be this kind of insurance, it's probably better for him to write it anyway, even though I do write policies like that, because that's his area of expertise. So, he's a Steeler fan, but I forgive him for it, okay? That's where he grew up, okay? So let's go back here. So there's a sense of intimacy, right, around all these things, social things, sexual things, an intimate partner, how to compete with others in a way that shows you understand social norms in your group, and how to cooperate with others. Okay? When you finally get to the generativity, what's actually happening here is you're going the other way. The divided labor in the shared household comes from this idea of raising children as cooperative. But no matter what you're doing, there's a sense that you are able now. It goes even deeper. A sense that you can really go in, and these two actually are the same, right? Work with other people in order to produce something productive, right? When you have friends and sexual partners and people with whom you're working, how you relate to them, how you make them feel is an aspect of generativity, right? Generativity, he calls it generativity versus stagnation, but some people, I'm one of them, call it that it's not only stagnation, but it's also destructive. The opposite of building is destroying, right? If you're destructive of other people's feelings, of their emotions, etc., that's the opposite of generativity too. And ultimately, when integrity versus despair, there's a sense of humankind. We're going to see also with Maslow, whom we're going to start in a little while. There's a sense of, who am I? That I am one of all humanity, appreciating all humanity, and trying to look at your sense. There's an integrity of your place in among in the human race, if you will. You know those forms where they put down, you have to put race? I write human. Because the other divides are artificial and a little silly to me. So let's look at ideal achievements. Here's what Maslow was going to tell you. That a healthy resolution that you're striving for. When you have a healthy resolution, when you have a healthy resolution of the trust versus mistrust, you have hope. You become hope. You have hope. If you don't trust anybody, you don't have any hope. I don't trust people. Everything's going to be screwed up. People are going to get to me. When you trust people, you have a hope that things will be okay, because people around you are basically okay. And things and when you interact with people, you get this? When you interact with people and you can trust people, you're hopeful about the outcome of your interactions. Whoops, wrong button. Autonomy versus shame gives you willpower. Okay? You can see it's related to toilet training. But now you know how to do things. You have a sense that I can wait, I can do things, I can be okay. Okay? And I can wait and do them in the proper way. The proper way is willpower. Initiative versus guilt gives you a sense of purpose. Industry versus inferiority gives you a sense of competence. The same word that Piaget used. If you have a good sense of industry, you feel competent. If you have a good sense of initiative, you feel purpose in life. Whoops, keep hitting the wrong button. Identity versus role inducement is fidelity. And that's fidelity to self as much as to others. I know who I am, what I am, I can hang in there, and I can be okay. Okay? Come back to me for a second. Interestingly enough, put the picture on me if you can for a second. Interesting enough, fidelity, guess not. Fidelity doesn't only, it means that I have a sense of who I am and what I am, what I'm going to do in life. And I can give you the same right to be who you are and what you are. That can be a little tough. So you can be different from me. Things I believe in intensely, it's okay for you to believe in something else. Because you have to be true to yourself. Intimacy versus isolation is love. The achievement, an intimate person can experience love. Can you get the picture back on me for a second? And love is not just, there are all kinds of love. We all sense that. There's love for a sexual partner. There's love for children. There's love for parents. They're all different. I remember once a faculty member here had a heart attack, and he and I have been working together a long time. There were only 2 people could go in, and there were 3 of us who had been close to him. Don't ask, somehow I got left out because of the timing and this and that. One was... So I called him up. Right? I called him up. And I left a message on the machine. I knew his wife would be at the hospital with him. And before I could say it, I said, is there anything I can do? I knew there was nothing I could do. But I said, I love you. And if there's anything, it just came out. I heard it. It was strange to me, but that's what I was really feeling. I mean, and I don't love him the way I love my kids or my wife or my parents or my grandchild or anything, but it's a certain sense, there's a certain sense of intimacy that he and I have had. We've been through a lot in this place together. We've cooperated together. We've fought battles together. We fought with each other. Don't worry. Okay, let's go back to the PowerPoint here. Generativity, of course, if you're generative, you have care. Generativity means you care about what you leave behind. You care about others. Raising children, or doing whatever you're doing. Look, if you don't think that picking up the garbage is generative, think again. What would happen if tomorrow nobody picked up your garbage? You'd be in trouble. The guy who eventually did come and fix the electricity, you could tell he wanted it to be right. He wanted us to be happy. There's some weird electric fixture in the house. There's an electric that has It's the lights, and then there's a heater. I don't know, in the bathroom. I don't know what the heck you need a heater for in the bathroom in Houston. But there it was. I said, oh man, they haven't made these in 3,000 years. Maybe it was before Central Air. I don't know. He was determined, and the plate was gone when I bought the house. And I went to 50 stores. There's no plate. He said, oh, they don't make this stuff anymore. Instead of the switches go sideways instead of up and down in there. And it was nuts. And I looked everywhere. One place I found in one hardware store said, oh, they haven't made those in years. He found it for me. He wanted me to be happy with a job. Right? I finally called him. I said, you haven't asked me? I mean, it was a $1,500 job. I don't know. It was a lot of money for that thing. He said, I don't want the money till I get that plate. He said, I don't even want it. I said, I'll write you. No. Wouldn't give me his address. I had his phone, I didn't have his address. He finally, when he got the plate, he brought the plate over and he took the check. That's a generative person. He cares about me. He wants things to be right. He wants to do it right. And finally, at the last stage, that's when we get to the last stage, it's wisdom and inner peace. Right? So a healthy person is hopeful, has willpower, is purposeful, feels a sense of competence in self, has a fidelity to self and other, can love others, cares about society and other people, and has a certain inner wisdom and inner peace. That's a healthy person. And we're always grappling with all of these things at the same time. So, come back to me now if you can. Put the camera on me. I know it sounds a little mushy, but in the end, what Erickson is saying is that the key to human interaction is letting people be this way. And if you're going to be a teacher or a counselor and you're going to work with kids, adolescents, and young adults, what you're really talking about is giving a sense of competence, a sense of industry versus inferiority, helping people find their identity, and helping them develop relationships. And if you're going to do that, you have to be able to develop intimate relationships yourself. You have to care about other people. Remember, caring is there. You know, that's the old comedians, Rodney Dangerfield and not Roger Dangerfield, the other one, the nasty one, Rickles. I don't care about you, right? Get away from me, right? It strikes us as funny because it's just not the way people are supposed to be. By the way, he's not that way at all. People say he's just a wonderful guy. My son actually worked with him right at the beginning of his career and said he's a sweet guy. You know, it was in some commercial. So these are the kinds of things we need. You know, we need to consider. And again, it's the emotional health that counts. And you talk about people jumping from job to job. Those are people who have trouble finding a sense of self. And people like that, they have difficulty with other kinds of things too. So, and sometimes yourself is not your job. Sometimes people realize it's not the job that's going to do it. And I have to do something else. Now, let's switch gears a little. Remember I told you Freud was a doctor, right? We're going to talk about the next reaction to Freud. Well, people go to doctors when they are sick. Good, y'all got that. So along are going to come a bunch of people and say to Freud, no wonder that you thought that everybody is full of rage and anger and upset and being driven by inner urges from sicknesses in childhood. Everybody you saw was sick. No wonder you think people are nuts. Everybody you saw is nuts. Right? It's like having a person who only sees cancer patients and trying to make a sense of human anatomy from never having seen a healthy human body. Right? You're wrong. What you are seeing is people who are emotionally sick. That is not how people are supposed to be. Those people call themselves the humanists. Okay? And they said that what Freud is seeing is people who have been psychologically crushed. Maslow called it the crushing of psychological bones. That in fact people are basically healthy. Well, the question of sick and healthy is a very interesting one. And it's one that in general in society, particularly in the last 30 or 40 years, 30 years, we've had a lot of fights about. Some people say that health is the absence of sickness. Right? We had that a lot. You get sick, you go to the doctor. You have a bacterial infection, the doctor will give you something to cure. You get it. Starting in the 1970s, maybe before, some people said, oh, that's not true. Health, wellness, is something unique in and of itself. So you can, on the one hand, not be sick, but you could be much more well, right? You can exercise more, you could do more, you could explore more, right? Now, the clinical psychologists who come out of the Freudian tradition and the psychiatrists who clearly come out of the Freudian tradition, they're under this idea, the clinical, at least traditionally, psychiatry and clinical psychology come on this idea of health is the absence of sickness. But there's another tradition which is reflected in counseling psychology and in humanistic education. It's not an accident that Carl Rogers, I gave you an article by him to read, right? That Carl Rogers was both a therapist and a renowned educator. They say no, sickness, wellness is something in and of itself. Even if you're not sick, you can be smoking and not be sick. Well, you ought to stop smoking. You cannot exercise and not be sick. We ought to exercise. Look, I'll tell you the truth. My mother's 90, she's still around. My father lived to be 86 and smoked like a chimney for 30 years. Doctors told me he stopped after he almost died. But doctor said probably he would have lived longer if he hadn't done that to himself, right? And he got, other things happened. The heart attack that he had from the smoking, it caused other things to tear. He said if that hadn't happened, he would have been, if you stop smoking, you don't have the heart attack, you'll be okay. But stop smoking. Any smokers in here? Stop. All right, in any case, so I said, you know what, I'm relying on my genes. I got good genes, and both of them, siblings live forever on both sides. One exception. I had one sister, of course, we had one killed in an accident, who died in her 70s. I mean, that was a kid. I'll tell you this, I know the story's going on for a long time. As I speak, my mother is 90 and still has two sisters, older sisters alive. I mean, there are good genes there. I said, I'm relying on my genes. So I said, the hell with the diets and the exercise, I don't want to hear about it. So the doctor said to me, look, fine. Can you walk upstairs? He said, I'll take the elevator. No, but he said, you'll be more well if you'll exercise. That I do now, son. If you'll diet. That I do 12 hours a day. The other 12, all bets are off, right? That kind of stuff. So there's this sense of wellness is something. Go ahead, say it.
The 12 hours that you're on a diet, you're asleep.
No, only 8 of them. Or 7 of them. Only 7 of them. I said, about 7. See? Yeah, I'm okay, right? On good days, I can diet except for 2 hours. Those 2 hours I'm at it, baby. You understand what I'm saying? Being well is not just a matter of not being sick. There's a certain health. And the humanists say human beings were meant to be psychologically well. So let's go. Now this stuff is going to sound a little ooey gooey. There's one person who's, in fact, she and I are very, you can tell I have a lot of sympathy with Piaget. So does she. I like this stuff. She said it's like mush. She said I feel like I'm walking through I don't know, rose petals. Maybe span rose petals means some phony wedding. I don't know. She thinks it's too gooey. But take a look at it, okay? When humanism came along, not yet, Maslow called it the third way. The other 2 ways were behaviorism, which was completely informing education at the time, and Freudianism. So Maslow said, I don't agree with, mine is the third way. Here are his postulates. Okay, let's take a look here. Humans are inherently good, not rotten the way Freud said, People are rotten. Something bad has happened to them. They're sick. Humans are active as well as reactive. That's a crack at Skinner. But it's also a crack at all the people who say, you can plan education and get the kids to learn what you want them to learn. Said the humanists. People are active, exploring. They have their own ideas and interests. Your job, the idea of the teacher being a facilitator, this is where it comes from. Piaget didn't talk about that too. Facilitate what people are inherently active and interested in things. They're not just waiting to be reinforced or waiting to show them strategies how to learn what you want them to learn. Humans are more than the sum of their parts. It's holistic. Another crack at Skinner. We talked about that already. Human existence takes place in a uniquely human context, separate from animals. You cannot imagine what the humanists thought about Skinner experimenting with rats in boxes and then talking about people. Humans are unique. They are different from animals, and each human being is unique, different from every other human being, and to be valued. Stop, come back to me. I got to make a political statement here. There are people who call themselves secular humanists. Okay, they are not the only humanists. Rogers was a son of a minister. Okay, matter of fact, there was a group around. I don't know if they're still around. I say they're called Christian humanists. Okay, humanism has gotten the rap that it's anti-religious. Simply not true. It was simply people who call themselves secular humanists saying we're the one and only true humanists. That's just not true. And as you go through this, if you have religious beliefs, you'll see that a lot of what humanists say, religions agree with, the worth of every human being. So humanists, because they're psychologists, won't say every human being is a creation of God and worth and as good as every other human being and worthy and needs to be respected. But without putting the God in, that's what the humanists will tell you. So, okay, let's go back to this now. That's my political disclaimer here. Okay. Let's go back here. Okay. Humans are always aware of being aware. They're conscious. They have a conscious awareness of self and others. So it's not like Freud said, we're driven by the subconscious inner compulsions, and we don't know where they come from. That may be true, but we're conscious, we're aware, we have real goals, we're active, and we're aware of ourselves. We're self-aware. And we can change ourselves. Human behavior is determined by an individual's perception of self, self-concept. It's not just all these crazy inner drives. Okay? We're aware of ourselves, who we are and what we are. Healthy human beings in particular are aware of who they are and what they are. If you're not healthy, you can't see it. For behavior to change, self-perceptions have to change. I'm not sure if that's, a lot of people say that's not true, but anyway. Humans have free will and responsibility. That's another crack at Skinner. Skinner wrote a book called Beyond Freedom and Dignity. Toward the end of his career, he said, freedom and dignity, they're baloney. They're just constructs you make up. We don't have any of that stuff. We're just pushed around by our environment. And there's even some of that in Bandura. Well, you're the sum of what you've learned. These guys say, no, you have free will. You can make your own determinations. And because you have free will, you have responsibility. Sounds like some religions I know. Okay? Humans are intentional and aim for goals. We are neither completely driven by irrational forces, nor are we driven by the environment and we're just responsive to the environment and do what other people want us to do. The way learning theories say. Okay, so what's humanism? I've got to get my picture out of there. Okay, because we're going to have a lot of stuff here. These are the words that characterize humanism. I know it sounds a little mushy, but it's a good antidote to Freud and an antidote to people who feel that kids are just little machines that we can shape as clay and pour knowledge into their head. All right, let's go back here. All right, I'll get on my soapbox again. Dignity. Humans are rational. These are the words that characterize humanism. Truth-seeking. We'll get to that, right? Goodness. People are basically good. More than the sum of their parts. Self-actualization. Ultimately, we'll get to that. That's the last stage. But ultimately, humanists say each person, there's a unique self, and the healthy person is true to who he or she actually is. That's self-actualization. Hopeful. Okay, these are words I threw in here. I don't know. Oh, you can put my picture on. I thought it was a picture would cover. Motivating. People are motivated. It's affirmative. It affirms people. You can see that Freud is not affirmative. We're all irrational and crazy, right? It's celebratory. And celebratory means that there's a respect for each human being. I celebrate each human being as an individual. Maslow used to say, Maslow's not the only humanist, but he's the one I'm going to. When I go to work each day, I hope to learn from my colleagues, from my students, and from the person who's sweeping the floor. And he meant it. And he did. People who knew him said he meant it, and he did. He would engage in conversations with a person cleaning the floor and learn stuff about life. You don't think you can learn something from someone who has a job like that and is trying to raise 6 kids? You can learn plenty. Okay? It's holistic. People are viewed as wholes, not individual parts. Teach this, teach that. You can worry about this aspect and that. Okay. Each human being is holistic. It believes in human potential, growth, openness. Openness, openness, openness. When you decide what the kid has to learn, you're not open. When you know where you're going in a process of education, in the broadest sense, whether it's schooling or therapy or administration, you're not open. You're closed. It's a closed system. And enlightenment. We want to know more. Okay? Okay, so come back to me. This is what the humanists and what Maslow said. He said, okay, out of little acorns, mighty oaks grow, right? That little acorn, that little nut, has a potential to become a wonderful, wonderful, beautiful, flourishing tree. Now, every acorn, no 2 oak trees are like any 2 other oak trees. Those of you who grew up in the north, Western New York, anybody from Western New York? Oh, we got a few people here. You're from what? No, you're from New York? Push it down. Where are you from? Push it down. You're from Utica? Holy
He's from Utica.
Filthy with people from Western New York. We got one from Buffalo, Rochester. Where are you from?
The Falls.
Niagara Falls? Holy mackerel. Okay? For everybody else, forget about it. Maple trees. Those little twirlers that come down, millions of them. Maple tree seeds are little twirlers. They got a little thing at the end like a, and they come floating down, zillions of them, right? What you do, they have a little hard thing at the end with a seed and then like a little thing coming out. Here, they look like this. Let's go over here. Here, let's go to the over here. Whoops, whoops, whoops. I messed up here. They have a little hard thing here, and then off of it comes like a little thing like this. Rounded, is it? We're starting again. Wait, I got it. There. They have a little, wait, I'm getting there. They have a little thing like this at the end. There's a little nut inside. And then off of it comes a little thing that looks like this. Closer? You open this thing, take out the seed, and there's sticky, milky stuff, and you stick it on the end of your nose. You have a Pinocchio nose, right? Yes. You never did that? People in Utica are backwards, right? You go ahead.
I asked my husband about that, and he's from the South, so he had absolutely no idea what I was talking about.
That's right.
But I was like, didn't you used to go around and stick those things on your nose as kids?
The maple trees are transplants in the South. You get a few of them. The silver maples will grow. Most maple trees won't grow here. Okay, let's go. Let's come back to me. So every one of those little twirlers has the potential to become a mighty maple tree. The acorns, so those little pine cones become a tree. But if you got 1 million of them to grow, no 2 trees would be the same. But what the humanists are going to say is, inside of that is the potential. That's innate. But the environment tells you how it's going to come out. If you plant an acorn and it's watered and it gets sunshine and gets fertilized and gets care, you're going to get a mighty oak tree. If you don't, and it's deprived, it's going to come out a scraggly, stunted bush, right? Without any health. Maslow says, that's the same way psychologically. If your psychological needs are met, you're going to come out a human being with your full potential, actualizing your potential. If they're not, you're going to come out. If the environment doesn't nourish you, you're going to come out a mess. You're going to come out psychologically stunted. Who's heard this following, and so what does nourishing mean? Who's heard this following phrase? A good teacher leaves a part of himself or herself with every student. Who's heard that one? I'm going to be a humanist now. Nonsense! That's the worst kind of teacher you can be. A good teacher nourishes who each student is. People aren't meant to be a part of this teacher and a part of that teacher and a part of this teacher and a part of that teacher. What you have to do, let's go back to the PowerPoint, right, is to develop the person's own innate potential. Let each person become all she is capable of becoming. That was the University of Buffalo's slogan. Let each become all he is capable of becoming. That's where I went to the University of Buffalo. I don't know what they do now with the he and the she, but that's how they do it, right? Help individual to self-actualize, to become who he or she was actually meant to be. Carol Tribe, she's a humanist psychologist, said, within every person is an active will towards health, growth, and the active actualization of human potential. But it's of your own unique potential. You should not be trying to twist the kid into being a little part of you and a little part of that and a little part of this. Okay, now I know I'm exaggerating because there are people who say, this teacher helped me realize who I was, and the part of me is that teacher. But that's the key, right? All right. Now let's go to Abraham Maslow. Take my picture out of there for a second. There he is, old Abraham Maslow, right? By the way, let me add, come back to me for a second. Maslow himself also, even though he talked about every human being having the same needs, he, unlike Freud, knew about cultural differences. He actually went, I think he lived for a year with the Creek Indians, the Crow Indians in Canada in the 1920s, I believe. And they were still very close, remember, connected to their native culture. They hadn't been, they had a lot of practice. So he understood cultural differences, and we'll see that. So this idea that people who talk about universalities don't understand cultural differences, that's nonsense. Okay? They understand that culture has a difference. Now, okay, so let's look at Maslow's philosophy, okay? Let's go to the PowerPoint, sorry. Okay. Okay, Maslow said to understand humans, you have to understand their highest aspirations. Okay? Not their lowest. Don't start working with animals. Human study must be humanistic and holistic. You've got to understand each person as an individual. Human values are intrinsically good and desirable. See if you can get my picture back there now. Okay? They're good and desirable. People are basically good. The people whom Freud saw were sick. That's why they weren't good. Personality problems are, see if you can get my picture in the corner there again, okay? Are protests against the crushing of psychological bones. That's a quote. I don't remember from where, but it's a quote. Okay? I know, the quote's supposed to be outside of the period, but I don't like it that way, so I'm doing it this way. Okay? Personality problems are not because you have this id that's an innate part of you. It's because because your innate needs have not been met. Self-actualizing people can live more freely in the realm of being. What that basically means is they're more in tune with reality, and they're able to they're not pushed around by what they feel others want them to do or by going after certain kinds of what he calls deficiency needs. They're free to explore. They're free to explore their own ideas, their own selves, who they are and what they are. And as self-actualizing people, my idea is not, oh, my group is superior, we have to kill everyone else. No. You'll see in if you're healthy, you don't feel that way. And if you're healthy, you have a respect for all other human beings, respect for yourself, and you're free to go around and to go and explore who you were really meant to be and those issues that are really important to you. And of course, you have to have a democratic environment to reach that potential. You have to have freedom to do that. Come back to me here. I got to tell you about an essay that I wrote when I was in high school. I called High School Education, a Lesson in Fascism. I'm sure many of you are not surprised by now knowing. I said, look, I didn't know about school boards and all that stuff. I was just like the high school. I was 16, something like that. I said, look, first you have the dictator who makes all the decisions. That's the principle. The duce, right? Then you have the fascist council that has real power and can influence the dictator even though he makes all the decisions, right? But dictator listens and they help the dictator and they have a say. That's the teachers. Then you have the people who have no say, just have to do whatever the dictator and the fascist council say. You have the phony parliament that makes absolutely no real decisions. That's the student council. Who was ever on a student council? And the real decisions you made were none, right? Ooh, what's going to be for the theme for this week's Harvest Ball? And if you decide that for this year's senior prom, and if you decide the theme is going to be get down and dirty, nixed by the fascist council, right? The theme has to be, I don't know, sweetness and light, love in the afternoon. Am I right or not? Whatever the fascist council approves. The teachers, excuse me. I mean, we really don't have, and of course there's that group of traitors, quislings, and they call the service corps. The one that stands in the hall and sees if you have a pass, hall pass. If you don't, they turn you in. I'm not going to ask who was on that because you have to fail the course, right? One year in my school, they decided they're going to take the money that we raised from, I don't know, our whatever projects we had to raise money for the student council, and it was all our money, and buy red blazers for the service corps. What? So we got a petition. 4/5 of the school, 9/10 of school, some percent of the school signed the petition. We don't want the red blazers, but the person who said it was smart. Said, so what do you want? We want the money used to put lights on the sports field. You know how much that helped, right? 2 weeks later, they were all standing around in red blazers, turning us all in. All right? So our schools do not have a democratic atmosphere. We know that. But inside of classrooms, especially when teachers for a while, you can make a democratic atmosphere. Freedom to choose, freedom to follow your pursuits. And this thing that I've been talking about, how what we teach is arbitrary, this is part of it. I have a degree in American history. Did I tell you about this? I knew very well that the key day on the Civil War, the South, the Confederacy, the South lost the Civil War on July 4th, 1863. That's when Lee retreated from Gettysburg and Grant captured Vicksburg. I knew that, right? All of a sudden the war was couldn't take the war to the South, and in Vicksburg's the Mississippi, they cut the Mississippi right in the middle of the Mississippi River. The South couldn't use the Mississippi River anymore for transportation. If they tried, the North would just blow up the boats, okay? But I had absolutely no idea what happened in any battle. I knew about Pickett's charge. Just recently I read the reason for Pickett's charge, you know that charge across the field, is because Lee let Jeb Stuart go and do his own raiding and didn't have a cavalry there. I don't know anything about military history. I went to Vicksburg finally to take a look. Fascinating place. And I saw what happened militarily. I still remember some of it. I had no idea. What did I know? Did we do the thing here about going back in time? I don't think we did. Here's what's happening. You have a jail sentence of 15 years, but they're going to make you a deal. They have a time machine. You can go back in time. In this room and you're going to be put in a room with no windows and no doors. Closed. Can't see. There's a door, but can't see outside. You don't know where you are. I'm not going to tell you. In front of you is a newspaper with the date blacked out and the front page off. Okay? so you can't see the major headlines. You have to tell whether outside the economy, where you are, the economy is good, the economy is bad. We talked about this? Okay. Now, right? If it's a death penalty, if you can't do that, when did I talk about this? I can't remember. It doesn't. Now this is going to be on tape for 10 years that I screwed up. It's the same thing twice. The point is, that's social history. I didn't know anything about social history. I had a professor who claimed you could tell more about a country from the beginning of the 19th century on by the advertisements that were in the newspaper than any other way. Any country that had a written press, right? More than from the political history or from anything else. What if somebody wants to say, I want to study religion in America? What are you going to say? I was a history teacher. A kid told me he was interested in that. I don't know what to say. I told him no. It was a mistake. You know how many religions were founded in the United States? What's all this stuff about religion in America? We're a country, you know, in Europe, freedom of religion means freedom from religion. Here it means freedom of religion. That's what people call us a religious country. That's why the Europeans are mad at us for being such a religious country, right? What's going on here? What's the nature? If you want to know the history of tolerance in America, history of thought in America, history of immigration patterns in America, you could study religion and you'll know a lot. So how do you tell a kid no? And in the end, a democratic environment means letting kids free to explore what they want. Okay? It doesn't mean chaos. It does mean that if a kid says, I'm not interested in this, I want to do something else. You read there, I don't want to study this, in science I want to study moths. Say, go ahead. I don't want to study, this is a science class, I don't want to study the constellations, I want to study the rocks. Piaget would say, I don't think so. He would say, well, we're studying constellations, find something in here that interests you. But the humanists pretty much say you should follow your own star. And what they'll tell you is if you follow your own star, what you need to know to follow your own star, to read, to write, to this, that, you'll learn it all. That's why I have more Piagetian sympathies. But okay, you'll get okay. Now, most humanists will tell you this is how people are in general. But Maslow, he had, let's go back here, he had a hierarchy of needs. Okay? Now, we just talked about hierarchy. This is a hierarchy of needs. Okay? And once again, as we said before, you notice I stole the stuff. I didn't want to write hierarchy sequence twice, so I put it on this slide and there. Okay, he says his needs are hierarchical. And what he says, this is a hierarchy of potency. Okay, so come back to me for 1 second. What he says is strength. He said, we're all born with all these needs, but some are stronger than others. As a matter of fact, we can range them in a hierarchy of strength. Okay? So let's go back to the PowerPoint. The needs are innate, but they're not of equal potency or strength. They're arranged in a hierarchy of potency, from the most potent to the least potent. And an individual is motivated by her or his most potent need, most potent unsatisfied need. Maslow, the last book he wrote was called Motivation and Personality. I think he probably wanted to call it Motivation is Personality, but he didn't have the guts to do it, right? Okay? So what happens is that if the strongest need is not met, that's what motivates you. The others are irrelevant. If that one's met, the next one pops up. So it's a hierarchy. If that one's not met, that's where you're going to stay. But if it's finally met, the next one pops up. And when it's met, the next one pops up. If you get to a place where a need is not met, that's where you're going to stay. So it's a hierarchy. You've got to get it right, filled before you go to the next one. Now, here's what Maslow says. The needs, get me out of there, the needs are universal. But, that was cute, but culture determines how the needs are satisfied. Often determines. Okay? So come to me for a second, I'll give you an example. Okay? I'll give you one need. One need is a need for prestige. Okay? Called prestige, right? In one subculture, even in our country, one subculture, you get prestige by shooting an animal and hanging the head on the wall. In another group within the culture, you'll get prestige by going out and having a big strike against hunting animals and chaining yourself to the deer so that the hunter can't shoot it, right? Maybe the tree, I don't know. You get it? So the culture determines what brings prestige. Remember the thing? No charge for concert. Don't worry. Matchmaker, matchmaker, make me a match. Find me a fine. Catch me a catch. Lucky for you, that's all the words I remember. Okay? Who was the most prestigious catch in that? Do you remember? Who was the most prestigious one? Go ahead.
The butcher?
No. He fixes his daughter up with a butcher who's the richest guy in town, but it's a compromise for him. Not only because he's old. Who did when the three older daughters are singing, who was the most prestigious one?
The learned person.
The rabbi's son. The learned person. Money, eh. Prestige came from knowledge. From knowledge. Remember Tevye said, if I were a rich man. To him, the most beautiful thing would be able to study all day. It's not having the money itself, but be able to study. Prestige came from knowing. And remember, he said when people would test him, he said, he said, people ask me questions. That's how they have prestige. Prestige comes, right? In our culture, we have some of that. Right? I guess being a professor gives you prestige. Sure doesn't give you a lot of money, take my word for it, right? But money gives it too, okay? In some cultures, there are some cultures, the Indian culture in the Columbia River, where giving things away brought prestige, not collecting things. So it depends where you are. Okay? So culture may determine that, but the needs are the same. Okay. Let's go. Thank you. God, these guys are good. Maslow talks about two kinds of needs, deprivation needs and being needs. All the needs except for self-actualizing needs are deprivation needs. There's his hierarchy. I'll show it to you right there, okay? Let's do it one at a time. Maslow says, Maslow says the lowest need on the hierarchy, but basically the most potent, the strongest need is our physiological needs. Okay, come back to me. Physiological needs. Food, water, shelter if you live in a cold climate, sex maybe, sex is a complicated issue with him, and sleep. And I'll give you an example of his approach to mental health, right? Whenever by the end when they were doing sleep deprivation experiments, I don't know if they're still doing them, people would have to be, when people would agree not to sleep, what would happen is that they would be there all the time, they would make noises, wake them up, scream their names. When they would go into the restrooms or take a shower, there was this loud, abrasive noise that you couldn't sleep, you want to get out of there anyway. People would be deprived of sleep. The reason they did it, they would put people in a room, a see-through room with break-proof plastic walls. Why? Because once they did it without that. And one guy, after being deprived of sleep for 3 days, opened his drawer to get a pair of socks. The sock drawer was on fire. So he realized that the experimenter was trying to kill him, and he turned around and attacked the experimenter. Of course, this was a psychotic delusion, right? After that, they said, we better keep you behind some glass walls, right? It was a psychotic delusion. Come from lack of sleep. And there were people, and you know that one way to break people down is not to let them sleep. They'll do anything for sleep. Food. Now, fortunately, most of us, most kids in our society are not deprived of physiological needs. But I'll tell you, one of the reasons for school lunches is because, or milk in school, there was a period in America, in a lot of places, often in the rural South, right, in other places, where kids would get enough to eat, quote unquote, but their meals were terribly protein deprived. You know, pancakes, waffles, fritters, right? Some vegetables, collard greens maybe a little bit, that kind of stuff, but not really a lot of protein. They're poor. Meat costs a lot of money. So you pass out free milk in school, you know the kid's getting enough proteins, right? Animal proteins will give you all the proteins you need. That's one of the reasons behind it. Physiological needs, right? And physiological needs, and I'll give you an example. In the Korean War, okay, Seoul is in the northern part of southern Korea. The beginning of the war, the North Korean army attacked and conquered all of South Korea. Then the UN troops, mostly United United States troops landed, re-attacked, and drove the North Korean army all the way out up to the Chinese border. The Chinese said, don't come any closer. We're going to invade. Didn't believe them. Came closer, they invaded. Drove the UN troops all the way back across the South Korean border, back down into South Korea, and recaptured Seoul. American forces reorganized, re-attacked, drove them out of South Korea, backing up into North Korea. There was a line that was called the Kansas Line, a line they established just north of the 38th parallel. And then they ended it all back where they started, right? As you can imagine, there was utter and complete social and economic chaos. Chaos. Up and back. This was always in a couple of years. Up and back and up and back. It was unbelievable. People were starving to death. I'm not talking about you got up late and you skipped breakfast, and then there was a meeting, you thought it would be a lunch meeting, and there was no food, and then you had to stay late for class till 7 o'clock, you get home 8:30, you're starving to death. Not that. I'm talking about starving to death. And there was, of course, like every situation like that, there was a black market in goods, and one of the black markets was for expended metal. And one thing, when you shoot a bullet, you get a little case. Well, when you shoot a shell, you get a big one. So there were artillery shells. The people would scavenge the artillery shells and sell them for a few cents so they would have some money or something to buy food, right? And it would be scrap metal. And when they were starving to death, children would walk into the minefields, And it would say, in English and Korean, whatever language, minefield, don't go in. It was posted in they'd walk into the minefields to scavenge these shells. Why children? Does anybody know? Say it again.
Because their feet were smaller.
They're smaller, so it's less likely. But what else? It's a minefield. Because many mines are pressure weighted. So if they're weighted for 100 pounds, every soldier steps on it, it's going to blow up. But a kid who's small might not. Some kids did blow up, but some kids did. Some mines are pressure weighted at 25 pounds, right? And the kids would go in and they would blow off a leg or die. So why? Why? Because I'm going to die anyway. If I don't get this shell and sell it, I'll be dead from malnutrition anyway. I've got to do it. And often it was the weaker family, smaller kids, because other people would get out of the way. I'm scavenging the shells that are in safe places. There's nothing it's the only way I can keep from dying. This need came above all other needs. Okay, fortunately, we don't have too much of that in our society. Let's go to the next one, safety needs. Safety needs, and there are two kinds of safety needs. Consistency, particularly in physical safety. Okay? Might as well call them both safety. Let me talk about physical safety first. Come to me. Come back to me. Okay, physical safety. If you remember, there was a period there were a lot of guns and knives in our schools. And all of a sudden they have to cop at every school. There's a lot less of it now. Cop in every school, frisking machines and all that. Nobody said, hey, you want to get new textbooks? Hey, too much money. Want to fix the roof? Too much money. Nobody said a word. It was very expensive. Obviously, you're hiring these people, you're buying this equipment. Nobody said a word. Safety first. Safety, 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 safety. Okay? People need to feel physically safe. That's why I'm showing you how I knew these people were starving to death, because they were risking their physical safety for a physiological need. Physical safety is extremely important. Okay? And that also includes, by the way, medicine. That's why we have this debate in healthcare, right? Physical safety, aside from starving to death, it's a basic need. Now, I'm going to tell you a story, but I've been using filthy words this whole time. I'm going to use one more, but I want to give it to you, right? I had a mechanic on the corner. Let me put it this way. Let me tell you one thing. Nobody says, oh my God, we have socialized policemen, the government pays for the police. We have a socialized army, the government pays for the army. We're going to the dogs, the fire department is socialist, the government pays for it. We don't even think about it. Because that's our basic fundamental safety. Of course we're going in society and pay for it. That's what people are saying about medicine now. Some of the people, I heard that argument made once, who are for universal health care, say it's a matter of basic physical safety now. Doctors really can save your life. Right? 100 years ago. Right? Today they really can, right? Anyway, so I have to tell you a story. I have a mechanic. He's on the corner. Hello, how you doing? He fixed my car. He didn't charge me exorbitant rates. He was fair. One day he says to me, "This is the last time I can fix your car. I'm going out of business." I said, "Really? What are you doing?" He was a young guy. He was in his late 20s. He said, "Well," he said, "I'm going to become a cop." I said, "Why?" He said, "I work here all day and all night, and I have to pay for my own benefits and all this stuff. This way, it's benefit. It's a steady job. I can retire when I'm 40." I said, "Oh, that sounds good." He said, "Yeah, he said, at the beginning, they put you in the neighborhood with all the spicks and the niggers, but after it's a good job." I almost fell over. But think about it. This is a guy whose job is to meet your most basic need after starving to death or dying from thirst. It's fundamental. And he doesn't give a damn. He's going into the neighborhood, and he doesn't care about your safety. At the very least, at the very best, he's going to ignore you. At the worst, he's going to threaten your safety. Now you have a sense, from a humanistic point of view, why, when certain communities feel that the police are not protecting or out to get them, why the reaction is so vociferous and so full of anger and upset and rage, because this is telling people all the mechanisms in society that are made to protect your basic physical safety, they don't apply to you. And it is as frightening as can be. It goes to the very essence, aside from literally starving to death, of basic human needs. Now you get it. When I studied humanists, all of a sudden I got it. Imagine that. Imagine that you have an army. You have somebody who says, if the crook breaks into your house, I don't care, let him shoot you. Or if I'm a soldier, I say, if they're invading if the enemy troops are coming to that state, let them kill all of you. I'm going to make I mean, it's unthinkable. But that's what happens. That's why people are so enraged about response times to fires. In that neighborhood, let the damn thing burn down. We'll get there eventually. And the police, right? And that's why people are enraged in general. By the way, we had a big stink about response times in every neighborhood in Houston when the police are coming. They're supposed to protect our safety. So now you get it. Okay. And why it's important, and why in any kind of a setting people need to feel physically safe. If they don't feel physically safe, nothing else matters. Except unless they're starving to death, as I said, or dying from thirst. And you can't take an atmosphere where people don't feel safe and say, well, let's talk about cooperation. Let's talk about mutual respect and responsibility. Let's talk about Shakespeare's plays, right? At the very end. It's not going to happen.
Or elections in January.
Push it down?
I don't have anything.
Or he said, or elections in January? Why in January?
Iraq.
What? Oh, Iraq, right. That's right. And by the way, you can look at there. A lot of people feel the Americans promised them to be safe, the Kurds in particular. I don't know. It's dating this. But that's the question of safety. You can see vociferous reactions. In the Middle East, you can see different reactions when people feel, in America, for you saw it in World War II, when people feel, look, this is a war over there, or when it's my personal safety. Right? You can see it all over the world. It becomes vociferous. And that's why you can see that this is just absolutely fundamental. And if you have a sense that this organization that's supposed to protect my safety doesn't, there's a total lack of respect, a lack of, or that they're not fair. If you and I have a dispute, right? And the dispute involves physical safety, and they're always going to take the other guy's side, I'm not interested in it. Right? You're going to pick on me. Look at me. It becomes very difficult. And that's why it is so important. It's important when analyzing these efforts. And this I think is one of the most brilliant insights that Maslow had. Okay, next time we're going to finish Maslow. I hope go on to Cobra. We're going to talk about another kind of safety, which is the sense of predictability. How many of you as teachers have heard 1,000 times, be consistent, be consistent, be consistent, until you want to throw up? That's good advice. From the humanist point of view, not bad advice. We'll talk about that next time, and we'll finish this and go on to Kohlberg. And we'll all have a good time. See you next week.